For over 6 centuries, one European family wielded power so absolute that their private conversations could reshape the borders of nations, and their marriage arrangements determined the fate of entire civilizations. Certainly, behind the gilded doors of countless palaces, they perfected the art of dynasty building through secrets that modern political families still study in private. Their influence extended far beyond the magnificent courts and priceless art collections that tourists admire today. And while history books celebrate their public achievements, the real story lies in the carefully guarded family strategies that transformed a minor noble house into the rulers of the world's largest empire. The methods they used to maintain power for nearly a millennium remain largely hidden from public view, protected by centuries of discretion and deliberate mystique. Today, we investigate how the Habsburg family built and maintained their secret empire through techniques that changed the course of world history. If you were to wake up tomorrow morning as a member of the Habsburg family at their peak, you would control territories spanning 4 continents and 11 time zones, connecting Peruvian silver mines to Dutch textile mills, Austrian bureaucrats to Filipino trading posts, and American treasure fleets to Polish mines. Yes, your dynasty spent 6 centuries pioneering economic integration on a scale that modern multinational corporations still struggle to achieve, governing dozens of languages, currencies, and cultures through strategic marriages, calculated diplomacy, and sheer dynastic persistence. And for over 600 years, your remarkable family perfected the art of managing complexity while accumulating wealth that dwarfed entire civilizations, surviving the Reformation, the 30 Years' War, and Napoleon's conquests through adaptability and political genius. Yet, sadly, at least for you, your ancient dynasty would ultimately crumble from a single gunshot fired by a 19-year-old Yugoslavian nationalist in a Sarajevo side street, triggering the Great War that destroyed your carefully constructed world within 4 brutal years. Therefore, in today's episode of Old Money Luxury, we share with you the meteoric rise and tragic fall of the Habsburgs, the family that owned the world. In 1918, bank clerks in Vienna discovered 200 pieces of Habsburg jewelry hidden in a vault where they had molded for nearly a century, forgotten treasures of a dead empire. These glittering remnants, emeralds the size of quail eggs, diamond parures that could buy entire provinces, represented mere pocket change compared to what the dynasty once controlled. Charles V presided over history's first truly global empire, one famously described as territories on which the sun never set. The Spanish treasure fleets feeding his treasury operated for over 2 centuries, from 1566 to 1790, creating the world's first intercontinental supply chain of precious metals. During Charles's reign alone, 15 million ducats worth of bullion flowed into imperial coffers, though inflation devoured value as borrowing costs skyrocketed from 17 to 48%. Yet the real money came from Europe itself. The Low Countries produced 7 times more revenue than all the Americas combined. Every ducat funded Charles's perpetual wars against France and the Ottoman Empire, while enriching the banking dynasties of Genoa, Augsburg, Seville, and Antwerp, who financed imperial ambitions. The wealth manifested in stone and splendor at Schönbrunn Palace, where 1,441 rooms sprawled across a complex that dwarfed most European towns. 6-year-old Mozart performed in the mirror room, his tiny fingers dancing across keys while Habsburg aristocrats yawned behind jeweled fans. The Millions Room featured rosewood panels inlaid with precious Indian and Persian miniatures, each worth more than a merchant's lifetime earnings. 176 hectares of manicured gardens surrounded the palace, complete with a Neptune fountain and the Gloriette Pavilion surveying Vienna like an architectural crown. The Hofburg complex layered Gothic foundations with Baroque additions and Rococo flourishes, each generation of Habsburgs adding their architectural signature to the imperial seat. Maria Theresa stands as the dynasty's most remarkable monarch, the only woman to rule the Habsburg Empire in her own right for 4 extraordinary decades. While defending her inheritance during the War of Austrian Succession, she somehow found time to bear 16 children, including the doomed Marie Antoinette. Franz Joseph I endured the longest reign, 68 years of watching his empire slowly fossilize, while personal tragedies accumulated like dust on unused throne room furniture. His son Rudolf shot himself at Meiling in 1889, his wife Elizabeth fell to an anarchist's blade in 1898, his nephew's assassination at Sarajevo would detonate the Great War. The 1902 flight of Crown Princess Louise and Archduke Leopold to Switzerland scandalized Europe, their desperate escape from what Louise called the straight-jacketed life of Habsburg duty. Officials branded Louise's passion for André Giron as a pathological state of emotional agitation, the diagnosis itself revealing how the dynasty medicalized any deviation from dynastic obligation. Charles I spent his final years in Madeira exile, dying at 34, while his widow Zita donned mourning black that she would wear for 67 more years. Today, Karl von Habsburg manages $15 million, while his son Ferdinand wins races at Le Mans. Their fortune, a rounding error compared to ancestral wealth. But the Habsburgs didn't begin with palaces and treasure fleets. Their story started with an Alsatian count named Guntram, whose ambitions exceeded his modest fortress. The story of Europe's most enduring dynasty begins not in marble palaces, but in the misty valleys of Alsace, where a family of Frankish nobles played a centuries-long game of survival, patience, and calculated ambition. The Eticonids ruled these Rhine territories when Charlemagne was still a distant dream, their power flowing like the great river itself, sometimes rushing forward, sometimes forced underground, but always finding a way to persist. By the 10th century, their descendant Guntram the Rich commanded estates that stretched from the Vosges to the Black Forest. Guntram possessed lands in Alsace and in Breisgau, from Vogesen to Kaiserstuhl and the Black Forest. The Latin chronicles called him Dives, the wealthy one, and wealth in medieval Europe meant one thing above all: power. Yet power attracted enemies as surely as honey drew flies. The year 952 brought catastrophe. King Otto the Great convicted Guntram of treachery during an imperial diet in Augsburg. The specific nature of his betrayal vanished into history's shadows, but the consequences were swift and brutal. Otto stripped away Guntram's royal lands, reducing him from imperial favourite to cautionary tale. Lesser men might have been broken. Guntram endured, clinging to his ancestral territories like a wolf to its den. 3 generations would pass before Guntram's descendants dared reach for greatness again. His grandson, Radbot, understood that in the chess game of medieval politics, patience could be the deadliest weapon. Around 1020, Radbot, a nobleman from the family Eticonids, from which Habsburg derives, founded Habsburg Castle in what is now Switzerland. The fortress rose on a strategic height overlooking the Aar River, its stones mortared with ambition. The castle's name came from the old German Habsburg, the Hawk's Castle. Like their avian namesake, the Habsburgs would spend centuries circling, watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Radbot knew that castles alone won no crowns. Power required 3 pillars: land, blood, and God. He already possessed the first. For the second, he married Ida of Upper Lorraine, whose veins carried Carolingian blood, the holy grail of medieval genealogy. For the third, he founded Muri Abbey in 1027, creating a spiritual fortress to match his temporal one. The abbey served multiple purposes in Radbot's grand design. Monasteries controlled vast estates, preserved knowledge, and most crucially, recorded history. The chronology of the Muri Abbey, written in the 11th century, states that Guntramnus Dives, Guntram the Rich, was the progenitor of the House of Habsburg. By controlling the scribes who wrote the chronicles, the Habsburgs could shape their own narrative for posterity. For 2 centuries after Radbot, the family pursued a strategy of calculated modesty. Each generation added territories through marriage, purchase, or patient inheritance. They served the empire faithfully, earning rewards without attracting envy. They were hawks, content to feast on mice while eagles fought over carrion. This patience would be tested and rewarded in the person of Rudolf, born at Limburg Castle in 1218. By the standards of his time, Rudolf inherited substantial holdings across Alsace, Aargau and Breisgau. Yet, compared to the great princes of the empire, he remained what his enemies would later mock him as a poor count. Rudolf possessed something more valuable than vast estates: the ability to read the currents of power and position himself accordingly. But Rudolf's triumph represented merely the opening chapter in a saga of matrimonial chess moves and territorial acquisitions that would transform Swiss counts into global emperors. The Holy Roman Empire in 1273 resembled a corpse being fought over by wolves. For 23 years since Emperor Frederick II's death, the throne had been disputed, sold, and abandoned. This great interregnum had reduced the mightiest institution in Christendom to a hollow shell. Into this vacuum stepped ambitious princes, none more successful than Ottokar II of Bohemia. Ottokar embodied everything the German princes feared: brilliance wedded to ambition, backed by Bohemian silver mines. He had swallowed Austria, Styria, Carinthia, and Carniola into his growing empire. When he rode to battle, chroniclers claimed 20,000 knights followed his banner. The electoral princes convening in Frankfurt that October faced an impossible choice: elect Ottokar and watch him devour their territories, oppose him and face his armies. Then someone proposed a third option: Rudolf of Habsburg. Rudolf's election on October 1st, 1273, seemed perfect to the electors. At 55, he was old enough to be manageable, wealthy enough to be credible, and theoretically weak enough to be controlled. They saw a useful puppet. They gravely underestimated their man. Rudolf understood that legitimacy required three confirmations: the princes, the pope, and the sword. The princes he had. For papal blessing, he renounced imperial claims in Italy and vowed to lead a new crusade. Pope Gregory, desperate to end imperial chaos, granted recognition. That left the sword. Ottokar's reaction was predictable contempt. He refused to attend Rudolf's coronation, dismissed him as an upstart, and continued ruling as if nothing had changed. This insult Rudolf could not ignore. More importantly, Ottokar controlled Austrian duchies that legally belonged to the empire. Rudolf spent 1276 methodically isolating his rival. He confirmed German princes' privileges, negotiated with Hungary's King Ladislaus, and exploited discontent among Austrian nobles who resented Bohemian rule. By the time Rudolf marched on Vienna, Ottokar's coalition was evaporating like morning mist. The first confrontation ended with humiliation, not battle. Besieged in Vienna, abandoned by allies, Ottokar capitulated. He performed homage to Rudolf, surrendered Austria and Styria, and retreated to Bohemia. For any other king, this might have sufficed. Ottokar, however, was not any other king. 2 years of preparation followed. Ottokar rebuilt his armies, secured Polish allies, and convinced Duke Henry of Bavaria to switch sides. In 1278, he invaded Austria, confident his military superiority would crush the poor count. The battle on the Marchfeld at Dürnkrutt and Jedenspeigen occurred August 26, 1278. Chivalric conventions should have protected him. Instead, Austrian knights surrounded the fallen king. When the killing ended, Ottokar lay dead, his body so mutilated that identification required his wife's confirmation. Rudolf displayed the corpse in Vienna for 3 days, a grim reminder that the Habsburgs had arrived. At Augsburg, in 1282, Rudolf formally granted his sons the Austrian duchies, revealing his true genius. He understood that in medieval Europe, only dynastic power endured. Individual glory died with its possessor. Family legacy could last forever. Rudolf had transformed the Habsburgs from Swiss counts into an imperial dynasty, creating hereditary claims that would bind Austria to the Habsburg name forever. The hawk had left its mountain eyrie and would never return. Indeed, Rudolf's triumph at Marchfeld represented merely the opening gambit in a strategy that would unfold across centuries, and his greatest innovation lay not in conquest, but in creating hereditary claims that would bind Austria to the Habsburg name forever. However, his nephew would soon demonstrate that even the strongest dynasties could be destroyed by a single blade. Adolf of Nassau succeeded Rudolf, but faced immediate opposition from Albert I, who secured the throne in 1298 after defeating Adolf at the Battle of Gölheim. Albert's reign from 1298 to 1308 was marked by such austerity that Bohemians mockingly called him King Porridge, Kral Kasche, while he ruthlessly consolidated Habsburg control over Austria. He suppressed revolts by replacing Ottokar loyalists with Swabian allies like the Wolsey family, a move that provoked the local nobility who resented these foreign administrators. His 1306 attempt to install his son Rudolf III as Bohemian king collapsed after the Přemyslid line's extinction, exposing the limits of Habsburg ambition. The most shocking moment came in 1308, when Albert's own nephew, John Parricida, murdered him near Brugg, Switzerland, avenging his exclusion from Austrian lands under the Rheinfelden Treaty of 1283. This assassination destabilized the dynasty completely, allowing the Luxembourg family to secure the imperial crown with Henry VII's election, while the Habsburgs retreated to their Austrian base. Albert's sons, Frederick the Fair and Leopold I, faced immediate territorial losses, including Swiss territories that fell to the Confederation after their defeat at the Battle of Morgarten in 1315. Frederick the Fair's dual election as German king in 1314, alongside Louis IV of Bavaria, ignited the German Civil War that would rage from 1314 to 1325. Defeated at Mühldorf in 1322, Frederick was imprisoned but later co-ruled with Louis under the 1325 Treaty of Trausnitz, a compromise that weakened Habsburg imperial claims. Frederick's death in 1330 left the dynasty dependent on strategic alliances, notably with the Tyrolean Menhardins, to retain control over Carinthia and Carniola. Albert II stabilized the dynasty between 1330 and 1358 through legal codification and economic reforms that rebuilt Habsburg authority from the ashes of civil war. His Privilegium Maius of 1358 forged a distinct Austrian identity by granting privileges like primogeniture succession to prevent the territorial partitions that had weakened the family. He established the Hofrat or court council as a precursor to centralized governance while persecuting Jewish communities during the Vienna Gezera of 1420, confiscating wealth to fund military campaigns against Hussite rebels. Leopold III expanded westward from 1365 to 1386, acquiring Tyrol through marriage to Viridis Visconti and extending Habsburg influence into Swabia. His 1379 Treaty of Neuburg partitioned Habsburg lands into Albertine and Leopoldine branches, a division that would persist until 1490. Though Leopold's death at the Battle of Sempach in 1386 halted southward expansion. Frederick III revived Habsburg fortunes through symbolic politics during his reign from 1440 to 1493, achieving the last imperial coronation in Rome in 1452 to reassert Habsburg legitimacy. His motto, Aeiou, meaning Austriae est imperare orbi universo, encapsulated renewed dynastic ambition, while his 1487 victory over Matthias Corvinus at Wiener Neustadt ended Hungarian incursions and set the stage for his son Maximilian's marriages that would unite half of Europe under one crown. The 1867 Ausgleich created a dual monarchy that privileged German Austrians and Hungarians while marginalizing Slavic populations, planting seeds of resentment among Czechs, Slovaks, and South Slavs that would bloom into revolution. By 1914, the empire's 11 official nationalities had developed competing aspirations, with Serbs in Bosnia-Herzegovina seeking unification with Serbia and Czech intellectuals like Tomáš Masaryk advocating independence. The Habsburg bureaucracy's ethnic categorization in censuses and schools inadvertently solidified nationalist identities, turning administrative tools designed for control into political weapons aimed at the empire's heart. Economic disparities between regions intensified these tensions as Austria's GDP per capita reached $3,016 in 1910, while Galicia languished at $1,554. Hungary's feudal land structure left 60% of peasants landless, creating a powder keg of social unrest that threatened the empire's agricultural heartland. The Pragmatic Sanction of 1713, originally designed to ensure unified inheritance, became obsolete as industrialization widened gaps between Austrian and Hungarian economies. Post-1867 tariff policies favored Hungarian grain exporters but stifled Bohemian industrial growth, creating a 27% wealth gap between Czech and German regions by 1910. World War I exposed Habsburg strategic incompetence when the 1914 invasion of Serbia cost 28,000 casualties in just 3 weeks. The Eastern Front witnessed disaster after disaster as 1,200,000 Habsburg soldiers fell into Russian captivity by 1915. The army's reliance on 15 languages and outdated tactics, like mass infantry charges against machine guns, led to a 90% casualty rate among junior officers by 1917. The Brusilov offensive of 1916 dealt the fatal blow when Austro-Hungarian forces lost between 600,000 and 1 million troops, forcing dependence on German reinforcements. This catastrophe reduced the once mighty empire to a client state of Berlin, subordinating Habsburg interests to German military strategy. Hyperinflation sealed the empire's fate as war spending ballooned Austria-Hungary's debt to 220% of GDP by 1918. The money supply grew 1,586% in 1922 alone, while the crown's value plummeted from 4.9 to the dollar in 1914 to 70,000 by 1922. Post-war successor states inherited this economic chaos as Austria's industrial output dropped to 33% of pre-war levels. Hungary lost 72% of its territory and 64% of its population, transforming from a kingdom that dominated the Danube basin to a landlocked rump state. Emperor Karl I's October Manifesto of 1918 proposed federalization too late, after the Allies had already recognized Czechoslovak and Yugoslav independence, and Wilson's 14 points rejected Habsburg continuity. Hungarian Prime Minister Mihály Károlyi's withdrawal from the Union on October 31, 1918, triggered the empire's legal dissolution, leaving German Austria as a state no one wanted. Karl I's November 11th abdication marked the formal end of Habsburg rule, though he refused to renounce sovereignty, clinging to phantom claims until his death in 1922. Austria's Habsburg Law of 1919 banned royal titles and confiscated family properties, forcing descendants to reinvent themselves as private citizens in a republic that rejected their heritage. Karl von Habsburg transformed dynastic prestige into cultural diplomacy, serving as president of Blue Shield International from 2008 to 2020. His organization mobilized efforts to protect heritage sites in Syria and Ukraine, deploying 3D scanning technology to document 12th century churches in Lviv amid Russian strikes. During his European Parliament tenure from 1996 to 1999, he advocated for heritage protection laws that later influenced EU directives on wartime artifact preservation. His 2025 speech titled Integrity, Direction, Hope urged EU unity against Russian imperialism, framing Ukraine's defense as essential to Europe's rules-based order. Ferdinand Habsburg channeled competitive aristocratic traditions into motorsport, winning the 2021 24 Hours of Le Mans in the LMP2 class with Team WRT. This victory marked the first Habsburg motorsport triumph since Archduke Franz Ferdinand's 1913 Targa Florio entry, bridging imperial past with professional racing present. With 7 World Endurance Championship wins and a 2022 European Le Mans Series title, Ferdinand shifted the dynasty's image from crown jewels to podium finishes. His Drive Fast Act Faster initiative promotes sustainable racing, collaborating with teams to cut carbon emissions by 40% through biofuel adoption. In 2024, Ferdinand signed a multi-year contract with Alpine Endurance Team worth over $2 million annually, competing in the hypercar class despite a lumbar fracture from testing crashes. Eleanor Habsburg merged aristocratic legacy with haute couture after walking for Dolce & Gabbana's 2018 Fashion Devotion collection featuring papal tiara-inspired handbags. Her 2023 Imperial Reflections jewelry collection incorporated micro-engraved Habsburg crests into Art Deco pieces, selling out within 72 hours at Vienna's Dorotheum auction. Gloria von Habsburg, born 1999, advocates for neurodiversity rights, leveraging EU platforms to reform special education policies across member states. The Order of the Golden Fleece, which Karl oversees, now includes tech leaders like Elon Musk, reflecting updated chivalric ideals focused on environmental stewardship rather than territorial conquest. A 2024 Austrian poll showed 62% of citizens recognized Karl as a cultural ambassador, proving that ancient names can find purpose in modernity's fragmented landscape, while the family manages their $15 million fortune through Salzburg-based trusts. A fraction of their ancestors' wealth, but enough to maintain relevance in a world that no longer bows to crowns. Thus, from Guntram's Swiss mountain fortress to Charles V's global empire to Karl von Habsburg's cultural diplomacy, the dynasty that once commanded Spanish treasure fleets and Viennese palaces now races at Le Mans and protects war-torn churches, proving that true nobility lies not in crowns and scepters, but in the ability to transform with the centuries while keeping one's name alive in the hearts of Europe. At the crossroads of power and posterity, the Habsburgs forged monuments that redefined human achievement. Indeed, their palaces rose from European soil as expressions of absolute authority, where architectural perfection met imperial might in a dance of stone and grandeur. Here, in chambers where candlelight once flickered across priceless artworks, Europe's most powerful dynasty orchestrated the fate of nations. Thus, in today's episode, we'll take you through every gilded corridor that holds secrets of succession and scandal, showing how the Habsburg family transformed their vision of authority into architectural masterpieces that still command awe after centuries. First on our list of legendary palaces of the Habsburg family is Schönbrunn Palace, a place that has often been compared to Versailles, and its scale, history and artistic details reflect the cultural prominence of the Habsburg rulers. Situated in Vienna's 13th district, it was once the summer retreat for the imperial family. Construction began in 1696 under Emperor Leopold I, and Johann Bernhard Fischer von Erlach's original design set the stage for a Baroque masterpiece. Later, during Empress Maria Theresa's reign, renovations and expansions shaped the complex into what visitors experience today. These efforts, credited to Fischer von Erlach and Nicolaus Percassi, generated a building that blends opulent interiors with meticulous landscaping. A defining characteristic is its 1,441 rooms, only 40 of which are open to the public. They illustrate the grandeur of both Baroque and Rococo styles, as seen in areas like the Great Gallery, historically used for large receptions. The Millions Room, featuring rare rosewood and Mughal miniatures, and the Vieux Lac Room, with sumptuous red and gold decor, emphasize the luxurious tastes of the imperial family. Another highlight is the Mirror Room, famous for hosting a 6-year-old Mozart's first public performance. Beyond the palace walls, visitors can explore gardens spanning 176 hectares, or 435 acres, laid out in the formal Baroque tradition. The Great Parterre, the largest open section, includes manicured flower beds and geometric patterns that form a striking visual corridor leading to the Neptune Fountain. This fountain's sculptural elements exemplify Baroque artistry. At the top of a gentle rise stands the Gloriette, a grand pavilion offering sweeping views of Vienna. Farther within the grounds is Tiergarten Schönbrunn, established in 1752 and recognized as the oldest zoo in operation. Emperors and empresses frequented this zoological garden, which remains a center for conservation and education. Schönbrunn's historical significance includes its role as the birthplace of Emperor Franz Joseph I in 1830. It was also central in the early life of Marie Antoinette, who grew up here before moving to the French court. Following the collapse of the monarchy in 1918, this palace opened to the public as a museum. Today, its brightly hued exterior, famously called Schönbrunn yellow or Habsburg yellow, distinguishes it from many other European palaces. This distinctive paint scheme, applied in the 19th century, replaced sections of the original Rococo facade and became a color strongly associated with imperial authority. In addition to its museum function, Schönbrunn hosts cultural events and concerts. Visitors are free to walk through selected rooms and meander through the extensive gardens, tracing the same paths once reserved for royalty. This palace remains a major landmark for Vienna, drawing millions of guests each year. Its layered architectural history, lavish decorations, and celebrated gardens highlight the Habsburg influence on Europe's artistic and political landscapes. Schönbrunn's enduring allure captures a period when royal patronage and Baroque design flourished, connecting present-day admirers to centuries of imperial tradition. Number 2. Hofburg Palace, Vienna. For more than 6 centuries, the Hofburg Palace in central Vienna served as the main seat of the Habsburg dynasty. Construction began in the 13th century, and over 700 years of architectural evolution have produced a sprawling complex that covers around 240,000 square meters. Within its walls, styles range from Gothic and Renaissance to Baroque and Rococo, reflecting the many phases of expansion initiated by successive rulers. Today, it continues to be a focal point of Austria's identity, housing the official residence of the President of Austria and the Austrian National Library. One of the most popular attractions at the Hofburg is the imperial apartments, which invite visitors to step into the private chambers of Emperor Franz Joseph and Empress Elizabeth, better known as Empress Sisi. These rooms present a snapshot of how the imperial family lived, highlighting personal tastes and day-to-day customs. Another draw is the Sisi Museum, where more than 300 items bring Empress Elizabeth's story to life. Among the noteworthy exhibits are replicas of her Hungarian coronation gown, mourning jewelry worn after her son's tragic death, and a reconstruction of her railway sleeping car. Together, they convey the public adoration for a figure often portrayed in literature and film. The Imperial Treasury is another essential stop. Here, visitors can see the crown jewels of both the Holy Roman Empire and the Austrian Empire, including the imperial crown, orb, and scepter. These objects underscore the scope of Habsburg authority. The collection also features a legendary narwhal tusk, once mistaken for a unicorn horn, and the agate bowl from late antiquity, which was linked to medieval myths about the Holy Grail. This treasury preserves tangible connections to centuries of European history and myth. Adjacent to these regal exhibits is the Spanish riding school, renowned for its Lipizzaner horses and classical dressage performances. The Baroque winter riding school, constructed between 1729 and 1735, stages events that date back to courtly traditions of the 16th century. Both locals and visitors gather to witness the precise maneuvers that define high school horsemanship, underscoring the institution's long-standing dedication to equestrian artistry. Though much of the Hofburg's function has changed, a timeless charm remains. Seasonal highlights like the traditional Christmas market have taken place here since 1935, and the Austrian National Library's historic hall stands out as one of Europe's finest literary spaces. This library's ornate interior preserves volumes that illuminate scientific, artistic, and philosophical strides made during the Habsburg era. Taken as a whole, the Hofburg complex demonstrates the breadth of imperial influence. Art, ceremony, and governance converged in these corridors, leaving behind a legacy visible in architectural layers and collections of priceless artifacts. The palace allows modern observers to consider how politics, culture, and daily life blended within the vast network of Habsburg power. Number 3. Hofburg Innsbruck, Tyrol. Alongside Vienna's imperial landmarks, the Hofburg in Innsbruck stands as one of Austria's foremost historic cultural sites. With origins tracing back to the 15th century, it embodies the grandeur favoured by Habsburg rulers, yet its location in the Tyrolean Alps lends it a distinct character. Initial construction is credited to Archduke Sigmund the Rich, who began raising the core structure in late Gothic style. Emperor Maximilian I later contributed his own vision, though the most transformative renovations were conducted under Empress Maria Theresa in the 18th century, introducing Viennese Rococo details that survive to this day. Among the palace's main attractions is the Giant's Hall, recognized as Western Austria's grandest banquet room. Full-length portraits of Maria Theresa, Francis Stephen of Lorraine, and their 16 children line the hall, all created by Martin van Muytens and his workshop. Above, Franz Anton Malbertsch's ceiling frescoes from around 1770 display themes like the union of the Habsburg and Lorraine dynasties. The room accommodates over 170 guests and took its name from earlier Hercules frescoes that once adorned the walls. These visual statements reveal how rulers cultivated an image of prosperity and continuity through art. Another highlight is the Empress Elizabeth apartment, returned to its 18th century appearance with appropriate furnishings. Visitors can see a salon, a study, a dressing room, and several bedrooms, each painted in different hues that reflect the late 19th century aesthetic. This area offers a closer look at daily imperial routines, from personal grooming practices to the design preferences popular during the Habsburg monarchy's twilight years. The palace further houses a Habsburg portrait gallery along its ceremonial staircase, featuring depictions of emperors from Joseph I through Franz Joseph I. These images capture a dynasty's lineage and evolving identity across 2 centuries. The Guard Hall exhibits large-scale battle scenes related to the Ottoman Wars, specifically highlighting Charles V of Lorraine's role. On a similar historical note, the Council Chamber displays major orders such as the Order of St. Stephen, the Order of the Golden Fleece, and the German Order. In a more reflective space, the Hofburg Chapel, erected in 1765 to 1766, occupies the very room where Emperor Francis I died. Its Rococo decorations include a cartouche carrying Maria Theresa's initials, intertwining personal remembrance with religious devotion. Today, the Hofburg in Innsbruck functions as a museum that preserves architectural and cultural heritage. Visitors can walk through rooms still adorned with 18th century furnishings, stand beneath Baroque frescoes, and appreciate the extensive art collections moved here from Vienna. These elements tell a story of a powerful dynasty that shaped Central Europe's political, artistic, and social development. By combining alpine scenery with imperial extravagance, the Hofburg Innsbruck provides an unconventional lens on Habsburg history and the family's lasting impact. Number 4. Schloss Ambras, Innsbruck. Standing on a hill overlooking Innsbruck, Schloss Ambras exemplifies the Renaissance spirit favoured by certain Habsburg patrons in the 16th century. Archduke Ferdinand I spearheaded its transformation, shaping it into a residence that reflected a deep interest in art, science, and collecting rare objects. The structure's foundations go back to the 10th century, but it was under Ferdinand II that an extensive Renaissance redesign took place between 1563 and 1595. Today, it is affiliated with the Kunsthistorisches Museum in Vienna and remains a place where art meets architectural innovation. One of the best-known features is the Spanish Hall, a light-filled ceremonial space approximately 43 meters long and 10 meters wide. 33 arches line its sides, and it displays 27 portraits of Tyrolean rulers, each set against a background of allegorical themes and mythological references. The hall also hosts concerts and events, including the Ambras Castle concerts and programs for the Innsbruck Festival of Early Music. The Renaissance aesthetic shines through in the vibrant frescoes that decorate the walls and ceiling. Another remarkable draw is the Habsburg Portrait Gallery, with over 200 portraits from the 15th to the 19th centuries. Esteemed artists such as Lucas Cranach the Younger, Giuseppe Arcimboldo, Peter Paul Rubens, and Diego Velázquez contributed to this collection. Visitors can follow a visual chronology of Habsburg figures, starting with Albert III and concluding with Emperor Francis I. Each portrait underscores how dynastic imagery played a critical role in asserting authority and shaping public perceptions of the family's power. The Chamber of Art and Curiosities, often called a Kunstkammer, stands out for its historical significance. It remains in its original location and showcases an eclectic mix of items, including scientific instruments, natural marvels, and objects acquired from diverse parts of the world. During the 16th century, having such a display was a mark of sophistication and intellectual curiosity. Archduke Ferdinand II was especially keen on bridging the gap between art and the sciences, which is evident in the wide range of curiosities on show. Additionally, Schloss Ambras boasts the armories, where the hero's armory features 121 suits of armor worn by well-known military leaders. The Strasser Glass collection presents one of the largest assortments of Renaissance and Baroque glassware, reflecting the era's technological and artistic achievements. The bathing chambers of Philippine Welser, Ferdinand II's wife, still exist and highlight daily comforts from centuries past. A section known as the Gothic Hall preserves late medieval sculptures and Emperor Maximilian I's St. George's altar, connecting multiple periods of art within the same estate. Today, Schloss Ambras appeals to families as well as art enthusiasts with its English-style gardens, duck pond and playground. Its enduring cultural importance stems from an unusual melding of collecting, scholarship and architecture, revealing how certain Habsburg figures blended personal taste with global influences to create a unique environment. Number 5. El Escorial, Spain. Though it stands outside Austrian borders, El Escorial near Madrid underscores how far-reaching Habsburg authority once was. Commissioned by King Philip II of Spain between 1563 and 1584, it ranks among the most ambitious projects of the Renaissance. The complex covers about 33,000 square meters and incorporates a royal palace, monastery, basilica, library, museum, school, and the Pantheon of Kings. Its original design is said to mirror descriptions of Solomon's Temple, and the floor plan forms a gridiron shape that commemorates the martyrdom of St. Lawrence. These architectural details led some observers to call it the eighth wonder of the world. The royal palace section served as the principal residence of Spanish monarchs. Philip II's private apartments there reflect his religious fervor, featuring a window that allowed him to attend Mass from bed when gout rendered him immobile. Visitors can also see the Hall of Battles, adorned with frescoes illustrating key Spanish victories. This room underscores the dynasty's efforts to weave together faith and military power, an approach visible throughout the entire structure. Meanwhile, the monastery portion was originally entrusted to Hieronymite monks, though it is now managed by the Order of St. Augustine. This religious hub holds a legendary library that still houses more than 75,000 early printed books and manuscripts, including texts on esoteric subjects once studied with caution. Another noteworthy element is one of the most comprehensive reliquaries in Europe, which is open to public viewing on specific feast days. Royal patrons intended these displays to legitimize their rulership by highlighting their devotion and spiritual standing. Deep within El Escorial lies the Pantheon of Kings, where the remains of many Habsburg and Bourbon monarchs rest. In total, 26 marble sepulchres line this space, containing members of the royal lineage from Charles I onward. A pudridero, or decaying chamber, is used to allow remains to decompose before their final placement. The most recent monarch interred here is King Alfonso XIII, brought to El Escorial in 1980. Visitors find it a solemn contrast to the building's more public areas, emphasizing the dynasty's lasting presence in Spanish history. Beyond its primary functions as a palace and religious centre, El Escorial houses a basilica, featuring a dome inspired by St. Peter's in Rome, and a royal library with frescoes reminiscent of the Sistine Chapel's grandeur. The overall structure includes more than 4,000 rooms, 1,200 doors, and over 2,600 windows. These features point to a vision that melded imperial might with Catholic identity, shaping a cultural complex where art and devotion converge. Modern visitors encounter a monument that preserves the essence of Spain's golden age. Each hall, chapel, and gallery recounts the ways Habsburg sovereignty extended beyond Austria's borders and into the center of Iberian power. El Escorial remains a UNESCO World Heritage Site, celebrating the blend of spiritual ideals, scholarly pursuits, and royal ambitions that characterized Philip II's remarkable reign. While most of our surnames would get us little more than a restaurant reservation, the Habsburg name that a couple of Generation Z heirs have once governed an empire stretching from Budapest to Prague, commanding vast territories where their very word was law. Thus, today, as we all chase our likes and comments on social media, Ferdinand Habsburg chases checkered flags at Le Mans, while his sister Eleanor turns the runway into her modern royal court. And though their family's current $15 million fortune might seem modest compared to tech billionaires' billions, that's missing the point entirely. You see, where their ancestors collected crowns, they're collecting something far more valuable in today's world: genuine respect. In today's episode of Old Money Luxury, we demonstrate how these modern Central European heirs aren't trying to rule a continent anymore. Instead, they're mastering turning 1,000 years of imperial legacy into 21st century relevance. In 2024, the Habsburg name still carries the weight of imperial legacy, with Karl von Habsburg, father of Ferdinand and Eleanor, maintaining an estimated fortune of $15 million through careful management of the family's remaining assets and business ventures. And his children, Ferdinand Habsburg Lothringen and Eleanor von Habsburg Lothringen, represent the Generation Z evolution of Europe's most storied dynasty, each carving out their own modern paths while maintaining connections to their historical heritage. The family's current holdings, while substantial, present a stark contrast to their ancestors' imperial possessions. Where the Habsburg Empire once controlled vast territories from Budapest to Prague, today's generation maintains a more diversified portfolio. Now, Karl von Habsburg's primary residence in Salzburg, Austria, serves as the family's modern base, a far cry from the 1,441 rooms of Schönbrunn Palace, but nevertheless befitting a family of their status. Ferdinand divides his time between racing circuits and his Austrian residence, while Eleanor balances life between Europe and her marriage into the D'Ambrosio family. And their income streams reflect modern aristocracy's adaptation to the 21st century. Ferdinand has established himself in the competitive world of professional racing, competing in the prestigious Le Mans 24 Hours and the DTM series. His racing career isn't merely a hobby. He's claimed notable victories, including the 2020 Le Mans LMP2 class win. Eleanor, meanwhile, has built a successful career in the fashion industry, securing contracts with prestigious houses like Dolce & Gabbana and establishing herself as a respected presence in European high society. Indeed, the transformation of Habsburg wealth from imperial magnitude to contemporary prosperity tells a story of remarkable adaptation. Their ancestor, Emperor Franz Joseph I, presided over one of Europe's great powers, ruling an empire that stretched across much of Central Europe. Today, while the family no longer controls vast territories or wields political power, they maintain significant social influence and have successfully translated their heritage into modern opportunity. The Habsburg name remains their most enduring asset, not as a tool for opening doors, but as a responsibility they carry into their contemporary pursuits. Yet the journey from ruling an empire to racing cars and walking runways represents more than just a change in profession. To understand how the heirs of Europe's most powerful dynasty adapted to life in the age of Instagram, we must return to the twilight of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, when their great-grandfather Emperor Karl I faced decisions that would reshape their family's future forever. The Habsburg dynasty emerged from an ancestral fortress, Habsburg Castle, built in what is now the Austrian canton of Aargau. First documented in the 11th century when Count Radbot used the castle's name, the family would grow from regional nobles into Europe's most powerful ruling house, though they would later move their seat of power to Vienna in the 13th century. Through centuries of strategic marriages and political maneuvering, the Habsburgs accumulated an unprecedented collection of crowns and territories. Their diplomatic approach to expansion was so successful that Matthias Corvinus, King of Hungary, reportedly quipped, "Let others wage war. You, happy Austria, marry," a phrase that would come to define Habsburg strategy. The family reached its greatest expansion of power during the reign of Emperor Charles V in the early 16th century. His empire encompassed vast territories including Spain, the Low Countries, and much of Central Europe, along with colonial possessions stretching from the Americas to Asia. This complex union of territories would later be divided between the Spanish and Austrian branches of the family. The Habsburgs' practice of intermarriage to maintain power became notorious, resulting in the distinctive Habsburg jaw that marked many family members. Yet this same marriage strategy helped them maintain their position as one of Europe's leading dynasties well into the modern era, even as other medieval ruling houses faded into history. The Austrian line continued to rule a vast empire until the end of World War I. The last Habsburg emperor, Charles I, abdicated in 1918, ending centuries of Habsburg rule in Central Europe. His son Otto, born in 1912, became crown prince in 1916, but would live most of his life in exile. In 1961, Otto formally renounced his claims to the Austrian throne, marking a decisive shift in the family's relationship with their former domains. Otto's marriage to Princess Regina of Saxe-Meiningen in 1951 produced 7 children, including Karl von Habsburg-Lothringen, born the 11th of January 1961. Karl's arrival coincided with a transformative period for European nobility, the same year his father formally renounced all claims to the Austrian throne. While Otto never officially reigned, he reshaped the Habsburg legacy through his work in the European Parliament and tireless advocacy for European integration. Karl grew up watching his father navigate the complex landscape of post-war Europe, where ancient titles held little formal power but considerable social influence. At the University of Salzburg, he pursued studies in law and political science, preparing for a role in modern European society. His marriage to Francesca Thyssen-Bornemisser in 1993 produced 2 children, Eleanor in 1994 and Ferdinand in 1997. A new generation of Habsburgs born into a world where their family's golden eagles had been replaced by the stars of the European Union. These children would soon discover that being born Habsburg in the 21st century meant inheriting not just a name, but the weight of 1,000 years of empire. Ferdinand and Eleanor von Habsburg forged paths their imperial ancestors could never have imagined. While previous generations commanded empires, Ferdinand found himself mastering race cars, emerging onto the professional racing scene in 2015. His early performances showed promise in Formula 4, where he began building the foundation for a serious motorsport career. His progression through racing's ranks proved methodical and determined. Competing in the FIA Formula 3 European Championship, he demonstrated that Habsburg talent could translate to the racetrack. His career expanded to include the FIA World Endurance Championship and Deutsche Tourenwagen Masters, culminating in a historic victory in the LMP2 class at the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 2021. A triumph earned through skill rather than birthright. Meanwhile, Eleanor established herself in the fashion world. Her aristocratic background and Habsburg name opened certain doors, but she proved her worth through professional dedication and authentic engagement with the industry. When she married Formula E driver Jerome D'Ambrosio in July 2020, she maintained her characteristic balance of public presence and personal privacy. Their father, Karl's dedication to cultural heritage preservation, particularly through his work as president of Blue Shield International, provided a modern framework for maintaining the Habsburg legacy. Rather than dwelling on past glories, he focused on protecting cultural treasures for future generations. demonstrating how ancient families could remain relevant in contemporary Europe. Both siblings developed distinct approaches to public life. Ferdinand embraced the visibility that came with professional racing, while Eleanor cultivated a more selective public presence. Their engagement with modern media reflected a careful understanding of their unique position, neither running from nor trading solely on their Habsburg heritage. The evolution of their careers demonstrated the family's remarkable adaptability. Ferdinand's racing achievements, particularly in endurance racing and DTM, proved that Habsburg determination could thrive in contemporary competitive environments. Eleanor's fashion career showed how aristocratic heritage could harmonize with modern professional pursuits without being defined by it. As their professional lives flourished, they maintained connections to their historical legacy while forging distinctly modern identities. Their grandfather Otto had shown how the Habsburg name could remain relevant through engagement with contemporary European politics, and his grandchildren were proving equally adept at finding their place in 21st century society. Yet, as their careers accelerated, new challenges emerged. The digital age's demand for constant public exposure threatened the careful balance they'd struck between heritage and modernity. Social media's relentless spotlight began illuminating corners of their lives that previous generations of Habsburgs had kept carefully shadowed. Between 2021 and 2024, Ferdinand Habsburg continued to build his reputation in endurance racing. After his breakthrough victory in the LMP2 class at the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 2021 with Team WRT, he solidified his position as a serious competitor in international motorsport. His continued success in the LMP2 class demonstrated that his Le Mans victory was no fluke, but rather the result of dedicated professional development. Meanwhile, Eleanor's life entered a new phase following her 2020 marriage to Jerome D'Ambrosio. While maintaining her work in fashion, she cultivated a characteristically private approach to public life, selectively choosing her professional engagements and public appearances. Their father Karl's ongoing work as president of Blue Shield International took on increasing significance during this period as the organization faced new challenges in cultural heritage protection. His focus on preserving historical artifacts and monuments during conflicts provided a modern context for the Habsburg family's traditional role as custodians of European culture. The siblings' divergent yet successful paths represented a new model for historical European families adapting to contemporary society. Rather than attempting to maintain outdated aristocratic traditions, they forged careers based on personal merit while acknowledging their unique heritage. This period marked a crucial evolution in how the Habsburg name functioned in modern Europe. Instead of serving as a reminder of lost imperial glory, it became associated with professional achievement in contemporary fields, from motorsport to cultural preservation. Their success demonstrated that historical legacy could coexist with modern ambition without compromising either. In 2024, the Habsburg siblings represent a striking case study in how Europe's oldest families can remain relevant in the modern world. Ferdinand continues his competitive driving career in the LMP2 class with Team WRT, his 2021 Le Mans victory standing as proof that merit, rather than birthright, determines success in contemporary motorsport. Their father Karl's work with Blue Shield International offers a different model of maintaining historical significance. As president of the organization, he focuses on protecting cultural heritage during conflicts and crises, transforming the Habsburg tradition of cultural patronage into practical modern action. This work proves particularly relevant as Europe faces increasing challenges to its cultural treasures. The contrast between their current roles and their ancestors' positions reflects broader changes in European society. While their forebears ruled through inherited authority from Vienna's Hofburg Palace, today's Habsburgs navigate a world where individual choice and professional competence determine one's place in society. Their adaptation offers insights for other historical European families facing similar challenges. The Habsburg approach, acknowledging their heritage while pursuing contemporary careers, demonstrates how ancient names can find new meaning in modern contexts. Their experience suggests that historical legacy can serve as a foundation rather than a constraint. This transformation may represent the most profound change in the family's long history. From Holy Roman emperors to professional race car drivers, from imperial rulers to cultural heritage protectors, the Habsburg evolution mirrors Europe's own journey from hereditary power to meritocratic society. Yet questions remain about how such historical families will navigate future challenges. As Europe grapples with technological change, political upheaval, and shifting social structures, even its oldest dynasties must continue adapting. The Habsburg story demonstrates that survival often means embracing change rather than resisting it. In the end, perhaps their greatest achievement lies not in preserving past glory, but in proving that Europe's most ancient names can find authentic purpose in the modern world. And now,